Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you're joining us from in this live lecture again. This is our second lecture, like I promised you. Um, Today's date is Oye Market Day in the 5th month of the Igbo lunar calendar called Onwa Ano. Thank you for joining us again in this live lecture. Remember, Nkolo Mahadum is an university. This is not a gossip center. This is where we package and present lectures from Igbo man, Biafran, and African perspectives. And from this university, we always encourage you to use your naturally given common sense, which we call akonuche in Igbo language. And we are set up to decolonize your brain, your mindset, because everything we've been taught, everything we are still being taught today, they are miseducation and misinformation. And so we are here to debunk, to give you the accurate information that you need as an Igbo man, or a Biafran, and an African in particular. And so we are advising you to please join, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us also on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and other social media platforms, and like, comment, and share the lectures so that a lot of people will get it. And if you start to follow us, anytime we present a new lecture, you'll be the first to get it. In addition, we are advising you to go through our old lectures. We have had up to 190 something lectures. Go there and you will see the stuff that Nkolo Mahadum Wisdom University is made up of. The type of lectures we are presenting to free your mind from mental slavery and misinformation. And the title of today's lecture is Takeaways from the USA President Donald Trump and South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. The meeting they held yesterday, 5/21/2025, at the White House. Because when we saw that meeting yesterday at Nkolo Mahadum, we were baffled the way the meeting that's supposed to be private was brought outside to the world to see. And what we saw showed that it's like a master, United States and Trump, and servants, South Africa and Cyril Ramaphosa. And that is what prompted this lecture, so that we as Africans can begin to think differently and do things in another way. Because oftentimes we always rush to be begging for help. It shouldn't be so. And so in that meeting at the White House yesterday, we at Nkolo Mahadum have some takeaways and solutions to African leaders. And the takeaways, what we observed from that meeting yesterday, it was mind-boggling. Because number one, that meeting should not have been held in an open place where the whole world was watching. After all, South Africa is not Ukraine. South Africa is not at war. America is not funding any war for South Africa. South Africa doesn't owe America any money like that for Trump administration to do what they did yesterday. And I must admit to you that we at Nkolo Mahadum, we admire Trump. Why do we admire Trump? We admire Trump because Trump is open. He's open-minded. He tells you what he wants to tell you. He doesn't sound politically correct in the open and then go back and do another thing. That's why we love him at Hadum. But other world leaders may sound politically correct in the open, but when they go back, they do something else. They do opposite. So we are, in Hadum and Wisdom University, we appreciate Trump. We appreciate the way Trump handles his business because he always comes open. But we are saying that that meeting, the way they open that meeting to the world live, is not a good way to receive a president like President of South Africa. Because South Africa is not at war. America is not funding any war in South Africa. They don't owe America any money like Ukraine, like Zelensky and Ukraine. They don't. They just came for bilateral meeting, how the two nations can benefit from one another, you know? And so it was an ambush for the Trump administration to openly televise that meeting across the world. And that is what piqued the interest of the staff at Nkolama Hadum to do this lecture to you as an African. Secondly, another thing we observed from that meeting is that American companies, about 600 American companies, are doing business in South Africa, about 600 of them. Why only 22 South African companies are doing business in America? What a wide margin that you can say that most companies doing business in South Africa are American companies. Because I bet you if you do your research, you may find out that these 600 American companies may be the highest number of companies from one country doing business in South Africa. And the question is, why can't Africans encourage their own more indigenous companies, corporations they have, or individuals to do business with America and other countries? That's 600 for American companies in South Africa and 22 South African companies doing business in America. I mean, it's a classic disparity that doesn't supposed to be if African countries can step up and do the right thing and not always be depending on outsiders to solve their problem. Another thing we discovered in that meeting yesterday was that South African President Cyril Ramaphosa was begging USA President Donald Trump to help him to get in more direct investment into South Africa. And we are asking at Nkolama Hadum, why should you be asking for more direct investment from South Africa? Why can't you develop on your own? Why can't you cut your coat according to your size? Why can't you encourage more individuals and companies from South Africa to help you solve your problem? Why must you be going and begging others for help all the time? Anytime you are a beggar, you are a servant. And that made that meeting yesterday like a master, USA, and South Africa beggar relationship. That's not right. You come to beg always, every time you are begging. The next thing we saw in that meeting was the comments made by Julius Malema, who is the leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters, EFF, in South Africa, where him and his followers, they said they were in a stadium, and he was telling his followers to be violent against white farmers. And also that about 1,000 white farmers was killed, according to Trump. We at Nkolomahadum, we are highly disturbed to hear that 1,000 white farmers were killed. Even the loss of one life is not good. And we are encouraging the South African government to prevent the killing of white people in South Africa. Even though some media outlets were saying that Donald Trump was making things up, was exaggerating, that is making things up, but the loss of life of anybody is not good. And we also want to thank Cyril Ramaphosa, because in that ambush that was laid for him, he was able to manage the situation. He really managed the situation very, very well than Zelensky, because he owed America nothing. He really, really, really tried to manage the situation, to explain to them that crime also happens everywhere, including in Black neighborhoods and in white neighborhoods. And there are some informations we want to bring to you, what you should note about South Africa. White South Africans are 4.7 million, representing 7% of the population. White South Africans are approximately 4.7 million, representing 7% of the population, but controlling 72% of all the land. While Black South Africans are 48.6 million, representing 80%, and now controlling 28% of the land. You can see the disparity there. And a lot of land was also acquired through wars, not given, but taken by force during wars, different wars that was fought by the Europeans in South Africa. When they were coming to Africa, during the scramble and partition for Africa, they came with wars also to South Africa and killed people and took away their land by force. And more lands was also taken during apartheid. And you know that the land is used for so many things. He who controls the land controls a lot of wealth. You farm on it, and it contains other minerals too. All the rare earth minerals, all the gold, all the copper, all the oil, and so many mineral resources. And so the whites are only 7% of the population, controlling 72% of the land area of South Africa, which means they are the one controlling the wealth of South Africa. Also, don't forget that during apartheid, the Blacks were discriminated upon. And the results of those discrimination and inequality continues to this day. And remember, Nelson Mandela was the first black president of South Africa. He became president of South Africa in 1994. So before 1994, when Nelson Mandela became the president, so the whites had been ruling the South Africa for so long. So by ruling South Africa for so long, they have acquired a lot of wealth. These are the things we want you to know, that the wealth of South Africa is in the hand of the whites. And here comes our solution from Nkolama Wisdom University. If Cyril Ramaphosa had contacted us at Nkolama, we would have advised him to instead ask Trump to help in wealth redistribution, because the wealth of South Africa is in the hands of the whites. So they have to come up with a way to redistribute the wealth across the board so that the inequality, the poverty, the struggling of the black majority will reduce. So when it reduces, it now decreases the crime in South Africa. Because as President Cyril Ramaphosa said, that crime happens everywhere, including both in the white neighborhood and in the black neighborhood. Also, we at Nkolama is suggesting to African leaders to try to solve your own problem. Cut your coat according to your size. Stop looking for help from outsiders. There's no free lunch in America. There's no free lunch anywhere in the capitalist system. Solve your own problem. Stop coming out to beg anybody for help. Develop your own technology. Develop your own way of life and be contented with it. You mustn't be living the same lifestyle as the Europeans, because the Europeans, most of what they are getting is from colonialism, is from other lands. And Africans have never colonized anybody. And so we don't have colonized lands, colonized territories. No. So any African expecting to be living a life as the Europeans is misleading. You are misleading anytime you're trying to live a life like the Europeans. Because the Europeans kept their own wealth, and through colonialism have acquired a lot of wealth. Even in my research on this lecture, do you know that Prince Charles, that is the Prince Charles of England, the royal family of England, owns 1/6 of all the land in the world. So the Europeans owns directly or indirectly majority of the land and resources across the world. That's where all their wealth is coming from. But we Africans don't have it. African leaders, cut your coat according to your size. Because see the humiliation you got, Cyril Ramaphosa. The humiliation you got from the White House yesterday. If you had been in South Africa, would you have gotten such embarrassment? The answer is no. And can any world leader visit you in South Africa and then you throw the visit open to the world to see the manner in which they did to you yesterday? The answer is no. And also, we are advising the American government to take things slow. We like Trump, but Trump should take things slow with foreign leaders that are visiting him. It's not everything, though that's why we like you. But South Africa, my continent, I don't think deserves the treatment you gave to our brother, the South African leader, Cyril Ramaphosa, yesterday. And with this, we shall be bringing today's lecture to an end. And before we end it, we must ask you to this revolution going on in Africa, everyone should join it so that we shall get ourselves out of colonial exploitation and killing and imposition. Because these colonialists, they are the one imposing leaders. Look at the one in Cameroon, Paul Biya. It is his turn. Paul Biya of Cameroon, almost trying to die in office, supported by France. That's not right. So all this imposition of leaders for exploitation and killing of indigenous people in Africa must continue to be resisted until Africa is free. And with this, we shall be bringing today's lecture to an end. But please subscribe, join us, and follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and other social media platforms, so that anytime we present a new lecture, you'll be the first to get it. Thank you very much for joining me today, and have a very, very, very good time. Remember, this is our second lecture, like I promised you, because what happened yesterday at the White House was very, very, very disturbing to us at the Colomado. Thank you very much for joining me.